it seems like common sense is going to prevail here, which is a good thing. As Kevin just told us on our internal chat, Indiana and Purdue are canceling their game this week. They both paused football activities yesterday, and it's open to debate whether Indiana would be able to play next week, even if they wanted to at this point. So to me, this just makes common sense. If what's being reported is true, that Ohio State's going to be approved with 5 games played instead of the requisite 6 to go on to the Big Ten championship game. And to me, this is common sense. First of all, they had 2 games canceled on them by other schools, Maryland and Michigan. And so they had 2 games they lost that were kind of outside of their purview, beyond their control. So that was the first thing. The second thing is they beat the next best team, Indiana, head-to-head on the field. I know it was just a 7-point win, but it was a win nonetheless. And third of all, had Ohio State played a game this week against Michigan, Maryland, whoever it may have been, and lost the game, they still would have qualified for the championship game. So in this instance, not playing a game or losing a game, who cares? I mean, it really doesn't matter. Well, I think you take all that into account, and it's really nothing, I don't think, about the hopes for the playoff or anything like that, because people are recognizing that the winner of the Iowa-Wisconsin game, who Ohio State probably would have played if they didn't go to the playoff, was going to be a ranked team anyway, requisite with Northwestern somewhere in the teens. And, it looks the same on your dossier. The only thing missing is that check mark for winning the conference championship, but they've taken non-champions before. Certainly Alabama got in as a non-champion and won the national championship. Ohio State got in as a non-champion in 2016. And so they've taken non-champions before. That's really not that big a deal to the committee. So to me, this makes perfect sense. And to me, it has nothing to do with the playoff, and just an unfortunate set of circumstances all the way around. You feel bad for Indiana on one hand, that they're not going to have that chance to play for their first Big Ten championships in 1967. That's a long time. And yet at the same time, I think you're putting the best team from the division into the championship.
I mean, what happens if Indiana isn't able to play next week? Ohio State's the only team that's been able to make it back after 1 week. So if Ohio State wasn't able to go, and Indiana wasn't able to go, and Maryland doesn't have enough games, are we sending the winner of the famous land-grant trophy of Penn State and Michigan State? Are we sending that winner to the championship? Does Michigan get – I mean, we're really getting way down the list at this point, and it becomes the theater of the absurd. So, I understand, and I've seen the outrage on social media that rules don't seem to matter, but this isn't like some rule that's been around from the founding of the Big Ten Conference, or even since the conference went to 14 teams. This is a 2020 rule, and I'm out at 2020. Things need to change. We've seen scheduling adjustments in the ACC. The people who have lauded the conference for making all these wise and smart decisions seem to be the ones that want to pile on the Big Ten. No, you don't like law and order. You hate Ohio State. So, let's just call it what it is. It's absolute hypocrisy what's going on in terms of social. I talk about the 6-game rule the way I talk about targeting. It was well-intentioned and is poorly executed. And I don't necessarily have an answer on how to make it right. So, it is what it is. I think that the conference ADs have reportedly made the right decision or whatnot, but there's certainly been a lot of missteps along the way, and why should we expect anything to be different as we're here in the 11th hour?
That rule was put in to keep a 3-0 team from, like a 3-0 Maryland team from going to the Big Ten championship game over a 6-1 Ohio State or Michigan, something like that. That's what the rule was for. It wasn't to keep the best team out when they've beaten the second best team. Although, don't get me wrong, I would love to see Penn State and Michigan play for it. Although then if Penn State and Michigan State rather, but Michigan State would need Rutgers to lose, because if Michigan State were to win and Rutgers would win, then I believe it would be Rutgers in the Big Ten East as the Big Ten East division champs over Indiana, who could not play, and Ohio State, who didn't play enough, and then you've got Rutgers in the Big Ten championship game before Michigan, which I don't know how to feel here. I think that this would be something pretty fun to watch. But then as people are watching it, they would all be like, how did you let Rutgers into your Big Ten championship game? And as I tweeted yesterday or today, national columnists have one column written for if the Big Ten steps in and changes the rule. And they will then, if the Big Ten doesn't, then they will write a column scathing about how the Big Ten didn't change their rule. So whatever the Big Ten does, people are going to complain about it. But especially if it favors Ohio State, they're definitely going to complain about it. And this isn't news today. I talked to somebody at Ohio State a week ago tomorrow, and they're like, because I asked them, could you move Ohio State and Michigan to the Big Ten championship week, since Ohio State's not going to be in the game because they won't have enough games? And I was told, no, Ohio State's going to be in the championship game. Don't worry about it. And so this has been like the ADs, Barry Alvarez talked about it last week. This has been understood that it's going to happen, and you're not going to punish the conference because of teams being overly cautious with COVID during a pandemic. And so that's it. As Steve said, as Kevin said, this makes all the sense in the world. It just upsets some people on Twitter. And you know what? If that's the worst thing that happens, I'm pretty okay with that.
I agree with Kevin in regards to it makes total sense that if you're going into this crazy season and you're going to foresee all these cancellations, that you would start with, okay, if we're going to have a championship game, we need to have a standard in regards to how many games are played. That makes total sense to start with that thought and that guideline. But they obviously didn't think it through. They did not think it through. And maybe it was just, there were just so many stipulations that even if they thought it through, they thought, we can't make rules and guidelines for all these various scenarios. So we'll just leave it for what it is. And if we have to get there and make a difficult decision that's going to look bad or is going to cause some criticism, so be it. This is what it is. And we'll make the logical decision, which it is a logical decision. It is the right decision. The team that earned it on the field is going to be in Indianapolis representing the East.
Yeah. I think that when you have two schools that have canceled beyond your means, you had no control over those situations. Yes, Ohio State did cancel against Illinois, and with good reason. There was an outbreak in the Ohio State team, as we saw this past week. They played without a lot of guys who would ordinarily be starters. And I think because it was so new when it happened, with all the tests on Wednesday of that week and Friday of that week, that they didn't want to risk what would have happened had they, gotten on a plane, gone to a hotel, played Illinois, come in contact with people. They just didn't want to take those risks because the infections were so, coming on at such an alarming rate in such a short period of time, that they just didn't want to take the risk. And they did the best thing they could possibly do for the health and safety of everybody involved. So that's why they didn't play last week. And people are still like, well, they should have played Illinois. There was a former player on Channel 6 on their Football Fever saying, these players only get so many chances to play. I really think they should have played the game. And, it's great. It's the United States of football. It's the earth of football. The world of football is all that matters. That's not the case. There's more going on in our society right now than just college football and playing these silly games. So I think you have to take that into account. And I think that's what Ohio State did. And for them to be penalized, and I'm not, again, casting aspersions at Maryland or Michigan. I think they handled their situations with integrity, just as I think Ohio State handled its situation with integrity. And it's just an unfortunate byproduct of this season that Ohio State didn't get to play those two games. But I think they deserve the spot in Indianapolis. And I think that, you know, there's just so much to it. And again, I feel bad for Indiana. They've had a great year,